Commander Reyna Patel stood at the bridge of the UES Sentinel, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the burning remains of New Haven colony. The settlement's defense platforms lay in ruins, their twisted metal fragments scattered across the planet's orbit like fallen stars. Her fingers tightened around the command rail until her knuckles turned white. "Status report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. Lieutenant Kai Zhang looked up from his console, his face ashen. 15,000 colonists missing, Commander. The Kraxan ships left approximately 6 hours ago. He swallowed hard. They were methodical. They disabled our defense systems first, then deployed their harvester ships. The entire operation took less than 30 minutes. Reyna's jaw clenched. The Kraxan had emerged from the unmapped regions of space 3 years ago, their massive ships appearing without warning at the edges of human space. At first, they seemed interested in trade, but that facade quickly crumbled. They were slavers, ancient and efficient, moving through space like locusts, stripping colonies bare of their populations. "Show me the trajectory analysis," Reyna commanded. The holographic display shifted, revealing a complex web of possible flight paths. The Kraxan were clever, they never used the same route twice, making tracking them nearly impossible. First Officer James Henderson approached, his weathered face grim. "High Command has authorized Operation Prometheus, Commander. We're cleared to proceed with full tactical autonomy." A murmur rippled through the bridge crew. Operation Prometheus was more than just a rescue mission, it was humanity's first major offensive against the Kraxan. After months of preparation and careful intelligence gathering, they had finally located one of the slavers' major processing facilities. "Signal the battle group," Reyna ordered. "I want all ships ready for long-range jump in 30 minutes. She turned to her tactical officer. "Lieutenant Rivera, status of the stealth systems?" "Operating at peak efficiency, Commander. The quantum camouflage will hold even under their advanced sensors." The UES Sentinel was humanity's newest warship, built specifically for this mission. Its experimental stealth systems were designed to counter the Kraxan's superior technology, allowing them to slip past their defensive lines undetected. Reyna activated the shipwide comm, "All hands, this is the commander speaking. 3 years ago, the Kraxan made a grave mistake. They assumed humanity would be an easy target, that we would cower in fear as they raided our colonies and enslaved our people. They were wrong." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, we strike back. Not just for New Haven, but for every colony they've attacked, for every life they've stolen. We are the sword of Terra, and we will show these monsters that humanity does not break. We do not yield. We fight back." The bridge erupted in determined cheers, quickly echoed throughout the ship. Reyna noticed Chief Engineer Naveen Dhawan watching her from his station, a knowing look in his eyes. They had served together for 15 years, and he knew better than anyone the weight she carried. Her younger sister had been among the first colonists taken by the Kraxan. "Jump coordinates locked," Kai announced. "Battle group reports ready." Reyna straightened her uniform. "Send the signal to all ships. Operation Prometheus is now active. Jump on my mark." The stars outside the viewscreen began to blur as the quantum drive spooled up. Reyna thought of the thousands of captured colonists, forced to work in the Kraxan's brutal labor camps. They would expect rescue to come in the form of a massive fleet, guns blazing. Instead, they would get something far more subtle, and far more deadly. "Jump," Reyna commanded. The UES Sentinel and its escort ships vanished into the quantum void, leaving behind the ruins of New Haven colony. They emerged hours later in unexplored space, their sensors immediately beginning to map the surrounding area. "Multiple contacts detected," Rivera reported. "Massive energy signatures consistent with Kraxan architecture." "We found it, Commander. The processing facility." The facility floated in the void like a malevolent spider, its central hub surrounded by sprawling arms of metal and stone. Harvested asteroids had been hollowed out and converted into labor camps, connected by a web of transport tubes. Cracks in warships patrolled the perimeter, their organic-looking hulls pulsing with energy. "Begin Phase 1, Reyna ordered. Deploy the quantum probes. I want a complete scan of that facility before we move in. Find me a weak point." As her crew worked, Reyna studied the facility's layout. Somewhere in that maze of metal and rock, thousands of human colonists were suffering, waiting for rescue. She made a silent promise to them all: help was coming, and with it, vengeance. The liberation of humanity's lost children had begun. The quantum probes painted a grim picture of the Kraxan facility. Each hollowed-out asteroid housed thousands of captives, not just humans but dozens of other species. The data scrolling across Reyna's tablet showed life signs packed so densely that individual readings blurred together. "Their security is unlike anything we've encountered," Lieutenant Rivera reported, manipulating the holographic display to highlight the facility's defenses. "But there's something odd about the patrol patterns. They're predictable." First Officer Henderson leaned forward, stroking his chin. "Almost like they're not expecting anyone to make it this far into their territory." "Arrogance," Reyna said, her voice hard. "They think they're untouchable." She turned to Chief Engineer Dowen. "Status of the infiltration pods." Naveen's dark fingers danced across his console. "Modified and ready, Commander. The quantum camouflage will hold for exactly 47 minutes once activated. After that." He shrugged. "We'll light up their sensors like a supernova." The plan was audacious. While the UES Sentinel and its escort ships maintained position at the edge of the system, a small team would use the infiltration pods to approach the facility. The pods, barely larger than coffins, were designed to slip through the gaps in Kraxan sensor coverage. "Tactical team, report to Launch Bay 3, Reyna commanded over the comm. She turned to Henderson. "You have the bridge, James. If we're not back in 12 hours. "We'll be back," he interrupted firmly. "Just make sure you give them hell." The tactical team assembled in the launch bay consisted of 6 members, each chosen for their specific skills. Lieutenant Sofia Rivera, their tactical expert. Dr. Nikolai Volkov, xenobiologist and medical officer. Sergeant Marcus Wade, demolition specialist. Corporal Tessa Blake, communications expert. Private First Class June Park, combat engineer. And Reyna herself. As they suited up in their stealth combat armor, Reyna briefed them one final time. "Our primary objective is to locate and secure our people. Secondary objective is to gather intelligence on Kraxan operations. If we can find a way to cripple this facility in the process, all the better." "What about the other species we detected?" Dr. Volkov asked, his Russian accent thick with concern. "We can't just leave them." "We won't," Reyna assured him. "But we have to be smart about this. We don't know how they'll react to us. They could be potential allies or additional complications." The infiltration pods were loaded one by one into the launch tubes. Reyna settled into hers, trying to ignore the claustrophobic feeling as the pod sealed around her. The interior was pitch black, designed to minimize power signatures. Quantum camouflage activated, Naveen's voice came through her calm, "Good hunting, Commander." The pods launched silently into space, their trajectories carefully calculated to look like random debris to any watching sensors. As they drifted toward the facility, Reyna monitored their approach through her neural interface. The massive structure grew larger in her view, its true scale becoming apparent. They reached their entry point, a maintenance airlock on one of the smaller asteroids, with 12 minutes of camouflage remaining. Sergeant Wade made quick work of the lock's security, and they slipped inside just as their stealth systems began to fail. The interior was dark and humid, with organic-looking corridors that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. The air smelled wrong, too sweet, almost cloying. "Life signs ahead," Rivera whispered, checking her scanner. A lot of them. Human biosignatures mixed with others. They moved deeper into the asteroid, following the concentrations of life signs. The corridors opened into a vast chamber, and the team froze at what they saw. Hundreds of beings toiled in the dim light, breaking down complex mineral formations with primitive tools. Humans worked alongside blue-skinned humanoids and insectoid creatures, all under the watchful eyes of Kraxan overseers. The slavers themselves were tall, spindly creatures with iridescent carapaces and multiple sets of arms. Those minerals, Park whispered, scanning them with his equipment. They're quantum reactive. The Kraxan are using slave labor to mine components for their FTL drives. A commotion drew their attention. A human worker had collapsed, exhausted. A Kraxan overseer approached, raising what appeared to be a neural whip. Before it could strike, one of the blue-skinned aliens intervened, helping the human to their feet. The overseer hesitated, then moved on. Reyna watched the interaction carefully. Look at that. They're protecting each other. Different species, working together against their captors. Commander, Tessa Blake called softly. I'm picking up encrypted communications. It's crude, but I think the slaves have their own network. They're organized. A slow smile spread across Reyna's face. Then let's make contact. If the Kraxan slaves are already resisting, they just need a spark to turn that resistance into a revolution. She turned to her team. Change of plans. We're not just here for a rescue anymore. We're going to turn this entire facility against them. The Kraxan thought they were building an empire. Instead, they've created their own worst nightmare, an army of the oppressed, just waiting for the chance to rise up. The team moved forward, blending into the shadows as they prepared to make contact with the resistance. In the darkness of the asteroid mines, the seeds of revolution were about to bloom, watered with the combined hope of a dozen enslaved species. The real war was just beginning. Making contact with the resistance proved easier than expected. The blue-skinned beings, who called themselves the Lasari, had been organizing the underground network since their own world fell to the Kraxan decades ago. Their natural telepathic abilities made them perfect coordinators for the covert rebellion. Krelvier, the Lasari resistance leader, met with Reyna's team in a hidden chamber deep within the asteroid's maintenance tunnels. Her luminescent eyes studied them with cautious hope. We had heard rumors, she said, her voice a melodic whisper, that humans fought back against the Kraxan. That you refused to accept slavery as your fate. But we never dared hope you would find us here. How many are organized in the resistance? Reyna asked, watching as Dr. Volkov treated injured workers with their limited medical supplies. Nearly 40% of the slaves across all processing facilities, Krelvier replied. We maintain contact through the worker rotation system. The Kraxan move slaves between asteroids regularly, thinking it prevents organization. Instead, it allows us to spread information. Lieutenant Rivera pulled up a holographic map of the facility. We've identified critical systems in each asteroid. With enough coordinated strikes, we could cripple their entire operation. And bring the wrath of every Kraxan warship in the sector down on us, Sergeant Wade pointed out. We'd need one hell of a distraction. Private Park, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. Maybe not. Commander, remember those quantum reactive minerals they're mining? With some modifications, we could turn their own FTL drive components into system-wide dampeners. Reyna's eyes narrowed. Explain. The minerals resonate at specific frequencies. If we can plant charges at key points and detonate them simultaneously, we could create a quantum disruption field. Their ships would be stuck in normal space, no FTL escape, no calling for reinforcements. Krelvier's antenna twitched with interest. Our people in the refinement sectors could help alter the mineral frequencies. We've learned much about their properties over the years. The plan began to take shape. Over the next several hours, the team coordinated with resistance members from a dozen different species. The insectoid VR-Cath would provide distraction with carefully staged equipment failures. The crystalline nexus would use their natural ability to interface with technology to disable security systems. The physically imposing Goral would protect the more vulnerable species during the uprising. What about the other processing facilities? Corporal Blake asked. If we succeed here, the Kraxen will crack down harder on their other operations. That's why we need to take their entire network down simultaneously, Reyna replied. She turned to Crelvier. Can your people send a message to every facility in the sector? The Lasari nodded. Through the worker rotation network, yes. But it would take time. Time we don't have, Rivera interjected. The Sentinel can only maintain position for another 36 hours before risking detection. Reyna paced the cramped chamber, her mind racing. Then she noticed Dr. Volkov deep in conversation with a group of Nexus workers, his eyes wide with fascination. Doctor, she called. Something you want to share? Volkov looked up, excited. Commander, the Nexus say they can use the quantum reactive minerals as a communication medium. If we can place modified crystals in each facility's refinement sector, we could create a linked network, instant communication across the entire system. The Kraxen would detect the energy signatures, Park warned. Not if we time it with the disruption field, Volkov countered. We'd have a brief window where their detection systems would be offline. Reyna turned to Crelvier. How quickly can you get the crystals in position? 3 rotations, the Lasari replied. Our people are everywhere in the refinement sectors. Then we have our timeline. Reyna activated her tactical display. We coordinate through the Nexus network. When the disruption field goes up, all facilities rise simultaneously. The Kraxen will be caught completely off guard, unable to coordinate their forces or call for help. She looked around the chamber at the gathered representatives of the resistance. Humans, Lasari, VR-Cath, Nexus, Goral, species that had never met before the Kraxen enslaved them, now united in their quest for freedom. The Kraxen thought they could break us by throwing us together, she said, her voice carrying through the chamber. Instead, they gave us the greatest gift possible, the knowledge that we're not alone in our fight. Every species here has lost something to them. Together, we're going to take it all back. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement, whispers, clicks, crystalline chimes, and rumbling growls. The resistance was no longer just about survival. It had become something more, the first stirrings of an alliance that would reshape the galaxy. As the various groups dispersed to begin their preparations, Crelvier approached Reyna privately. There is something you should know, she said softly. We have seen inside the Kraxen's minds. They are afraid. Afraid? Of what? Of unity. Their entire empire is built on the assumption that different species cannot truly work together. That we will always be divided by our differences. What we do here will prove them wrong. And that terrifies them more than any weapon. Reyna smiled grimly. Then let's give them something real to be afraid of. The revolution was set in motion. In 3 rotations, the chains would break, and the true power of unity would be unleashed upon the Kraxen Empire. The countdown to freedom had begun. Thunder of liberation. The 3 rotations passed with agonizing slowness. Each sector of the facility buzzed with hidden purpose as the resistance made their final preparations. The quantum reactive crystals were in position, modified by Park and the Nexus engineers to create their hidden communication network. Sergeant Wade and the VR-Cath had planted charges at strategic points throughout the facility. Everything was ready. Reyna stood in the hidden chamber, surrounded by the resistance leaders. Through the Nexus crystal network, they could see similar gatherings in facilities across the sector. Thousands of slaves from dozens of species, all waiting for the signal. UES Sentinel reports ready, Corporal Blake announced. Battle group is in position. Reyna checked the time. Initiate countdown. All sectors, prepare for simultaneous detonation of quantum charges. The air grew thick with tension. In the mining sectors, slaves continued their work while secretly passing weapons through the shadows. In the refinement areas, Nexus engineers placed their hands on critical systems, ready to shut them down. Throughout the facilities, the massive Goral moved into position to protect evacuation routes. Charges armed, Wade reported. Quantum resonance frequencies aligned. 10 seconds, Rivera counted down. 9, 8. Reyna thought of her sister, somewhere in these facilities. Hold on, she whispered. We're coming. 3, 2, 1. Detonate. The charges exploded simultaneously across every facility in the sector. The quantum reactive minerals released their built-up energy in a massive wave that rippled through space. Kraxan ships suddenly found themselves unable to engage their FTL drives. Communication systems went dark. Now. Reyna commanded. The revolution erupted with devastating efficiency. In the mining sectors, slaves turned their tools into weapons. The VRCAT disabled critical systems while Nexus engineers sealed off sections of the facilities, trapping Kraxan forces. The Goro led the charge against the most heavily defended positions. Through it all, the Lasari coordinated the attacks telepathically, ensuring no sector was overwhelmed. Years of planning and preparation paid off as the resistance moved with precision and purpose. The UES Sentinel and its battle group emerged from hiding, engaging the stranded Kraxan warships. Without their FTL capabilities and unable to coordinate their defenses, the slavers found themselves facing an enemy that had studied their every weakness. Commander. Blake called out. Multiple facilities reporting successful takeovers. The Kraxan are falling back to their central command centers. Tell all sectors to hold position, Reyna ordered. Secure the facilities first. We can't risk. A massive explosion rocked the asteroid. Through the Nexus network, they saw similar explosions across other facilities. The Kraxan are activating self-destruct sequences, Rivera reported. They're trying to take everything down with them. Not today, Reyna growled. Park, can you override their systems? The engineer was already working with a group of Nexus. Negative, but we can contain the explosions. Redirect the energy. His fingers flew across his tablet. There. The explosions were channeled into the quantum disruption field, actually strengthening its effect. The Kraxan's desperate gambit had backfired, further sealing their fate. Part 5, Dawn of Unity. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, 27 processing facilities had been liberated. Over 1 million slaves were freed, including 30,000 humans. Among them, Reyna found her sister, working as a medical assistant in one of the outer asteroids. But the victory came with revelations that would change everything. In the Kraxan Central Database, they found the truth. The slavers weren't just building an empire, they were preparing for war. They believed a great darkness was coming from the edges of the galaxy, and they were enslaving species to build up their forces. In their twisted logic, they thought forced unity through slavery was the only way to prepare for this threat. 2 weeks after the liberation, representatives from every freed species gathered on the UES Sentinel. The ship's conference room was modified to accommodate different atmospheric needs and physical requirements. We've confirmed the Kraxan threat assessment, Reyna reported to the gathered assembly. Something is coming. Their data suggests we have perhaps 5 years before it reaches our sector of space. Then perhaps they were right, a VRCAT representative clicked. Perhaps we need their kind of unity to survive. No, Krelvier stood, her blue skin glowing softly. They were wrong about the most fundamental truth of all. Unity cannot be forced. Real strength comes from choosing to stand together. Reyna nodded. The Kraxan tried to unite us through fear and pain. Instead, We united despite them. We've proven that different species can work together, support each other, fight for each other. That's the kind of unity that will save us all. The gathering evolved into something historic, the formation of the Galactic Concordat. Each species would remain independent, but they would face future threats together. The processing facilities were transformed into joint research and defense installations. The quantum communication network, born in revolution, became the backbone of their new alliance. As Reyna watched the representatives sign the Concordat, she reflected on how much had changed. The Kraxan had meant to break them, to remake them in their own image. Instead, they had forged something entirely new, a unity born of compassion, mutual respect, and shared determination. Commander, Henderson approached with a data pad. High Command has approved the expansion of the Concordat Defense Fleet. They're offering you command of the first Joint Species Task Force. Reyna looked around the conference room. Human engineers worked alongside Nexus technicians. Lasari coordinators planned strategies with VRCath tactical experts. Goral security teams trained with soldiers from a dozen worlds. Accept the command, she said. But tell them we need to move quickly. We have 5 years to prepare for whatever's coming, and this time, we face it together. The stars seemed brighter through the Sentinel's viewscreen, as if they too were celebrating this new dawn. The age of slavery was over. The age of unity had begun. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, something was moving, unaware that its approach had inadvertently created exactly what it had hoped to prevent, a galaxy united, strong, and ready to fight for its freedom. The end.